Before you can explain why some suffer longer, you have to first understand what the fire is. If you don't understand what the fire is, then you won't understand why some suffer longer. So what do we understand the fire to be? From Scripture. Isaiah 33, verse 14. The sinners in Zion are terrified. Trembling grips the godless. Who can dwell with the consuming fire? Who can dwell with the eternal burning? Verse 15. He who walks righteously and keeps his hands away from murder, bribe, and extortion spends eternity in the fire, not the wicked. That doesn't compute with most of what people teach. Most people teach the fire is a place you don't want to go and a place you don't want to be. But as you actually study Scripture, you discover every time God shows up in person, it's described as a consuming fire. When he talked to Moses at the bush is described as doing what? The burning bush, but it didn't get consumed. And when he came down to Sinai and gave the laws that Sinai had a consuming fire, but it didn't melt. When Solomon's temple was dedicated, it says the priests couldn't enter the day of the dedication because God's glory, fiery glory, filled it. It was too bright for them. It says in Ezekiel 28 that Lucifer, before his fall, used to walk among, quote, the fiery stones of God's presence, unquote. It says in Hebrews 12:29, our God is a consuming fire. In Revelation, it says we won't need a sun to light the new heaven or the new earth, because Jesus' presence, God's presence, will be its light. And the lie that Satan has perpetrated upon the world is the place you don't want to go, and the place you don't want to be is the place of eternal burning and consuming fire, and that is God's very presence. The righteous will live and be transformed in it. Daniel 7, Ancient of Days takes his throne, rivers of fire come out from before him, and 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands are standing in this fire with no harm. Moses, in his fallen body that did eventually die, goes up to the mountain and spends 40 days in God's presence, and God hides him in the cleft of the rock and puts his hand on him and passes behind, and somehow Moses sees God's backside, hindward parts, it says in King James, and Moses comes off the mountain with what? His face is radiating something that's described as fire. Did Moses have third-degree burns? No. Did his whiskers catch fire? No. Now, what did the children of Israel do? They caused them agony and suffering, because this is the fires of love and truth coming from infinite God, love and truth, and in their conscious guilt, in their corruption, it caused conviction and guilt and shame, and it caused them to back away. They didn't want to be in the presence of that, and so we see this. And Moses came down with favor and blessing from God and loves the people, yet they back away from him. And in the second coming, Jesus comes, and they beg for the mountains to fall on them and hide them from him who sits on the throne. Not because he's angry, but because they are corrupted in conscious guilt. They can't stand the heavenly truth. And Jesus said, those in darkness don't want to come into the light, lest their evil deeds be... Now, all of that put together, what happens at the very end, God unveils his life-giving glory, infinite love and truth, those who have been restored to at one-ment with him. We love it. We thrive in it. We are one with him. We actually begin radiating even brighter than Moses, because we'll have immortal bodies, be transformed. We'll be like the angels, brilliant and bright. But the wicked, who have hardened themselves in rebellion and selfishness, what happens to a liar that has been denying, I only abused that kid to help them grow up and know how to handle themselves. I wasn't really taking advantage of that person. That was really good for them. That's denial and distortion. Okay, and when they come into the presence of infinite truth, their lies won't work anymore. They have actual real awareness of what their evil did to themselves and to others, and what will it be like. Wow. And so the longer that you have rebelled in sin and selfishness, with the deeper levels of lies that you have told yourself, the longer it takes for the truth to burn through. Those who have short lives, a little bit of lies, the truth burns through very quickly, and they surrender and say, I don't want to live in this universe, I give up. And those who have deeper layers of lies and distortions, they pile up wrath for the day of wrath, because they're piling up the lies and the rejection that it takes longer for the truth to burn through. So some are many days burning, but it's not an infliction. It is the pain and suffering that the condition causes when God no longer shields them from his infinite presence.